You have been praying for years. You know the catechism. You have read scripture. You go to mass. You go to confession. You keep the devotions. And somewhere along the way, something strange has started to happen in prayer. The more carefully you try to think about God, the less real God seems. You construct an idea, omnipotent, omniscient, infinitely good. And the idea feels hollow, like a word repeated so many times, it loses meaning. The harder you concentrate, the more distracted you become. The more effort you put into meditation, the drier the prayer feels. This is not the dark night of John of the Cross, though it resembles it. This is a different diagnosis, offered by a different doctor. Somewhere in England, around the year 1375, an anonymous priest wrote a short treatise for a young man of 24 who was encountering exactly this problem. The book has no author's name. It has only a title. And that title describes the obstacle so precisely that 7 centuries of contemplatives have not needed to improve on it. The Cloud of Unknowing. What this anonymous English author understood, and was at pains to explain clearly, is that the obstacle in your prayer is not your lack of effort. It is your effort itself. We know almost nothing about the author of The Cloud of Unknowing. Internal evidence suggests he was an English priest, probably in the East Midlands, writing around 1375. He addressed the book to a specific person, a young man of 24, whom he calls his ghostly friend in God, a phrase meaning spiritual friend in Middle English. This was not an academic treatise. It was a letter of spiritual direction. The 14th century in England was a remarkable moment for contemplative writing. The same decades produced Julian of Norwich, whose revelations of divine love contains the famous line, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." Walter Hilton wrote The Scale of Perfection. Richard Rolle wrote The Fire of Love. The author of The Cloud belongs to this English mystical school. Though his approach is the most rigorous and intellectually demanding of the 4, he wrote in the East Midlands dialect of Middle English. The original title is simply The Book of Contemplation, the which is cleped The Cloud of Unknowing. He wrote at least 6 other works, including the Book of Privy Counselling, which is essentially a sequel. The Cloud belongs to a tradition the author himself names explicitly in chapter 70, the apophatic tradition of Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite, a 5th century Syrian theologian who argued that God is beyond all categories, beyond all names, beyond being itself. You cannot say what God is. You can only say systematically what God is not. And at the end of all the negations, there is a silence, and in that silence, a presence. 3 terms anchor everything that follows. The cloud of unknowing, the zone between the praying soul and God that the intellect cannot cross. The cloud of forgetting, the zone the soul must create below itself, sealing off all created things, all images, all thoughts. And the naked intent, Middle English naked intent, the stripped, bare act of love the author recommends as prayer. Chapter 3 of The Cloud is where the central claim is made with precision. For of all other creatures and their works, yea, and of the works of God himself, may a man through grace have full knowing, and well can he think of them, but of God himself can no man think. This is philosophy, not poetry. The intellect can form representations of created things. It can form representations of God's actions, God's attributes, God's effects in history, but it cannot form a true representation of God himself. Any idea of God that fits inside a human mind is, by definition, not God. And therefore I would leave all that thing that I can think, the author continues, and choose to my love that thing that I cannot think. For why he may well be loved, but not thought. By love may he be gotten and holden, but by thought never. Loved, but not thought. This is the pivot on which the entire book turns. Above the soul is the cloud of unknowing, a darkness of not knowing the intellect cannot pierce. Below the soul is the cloud of forgetting, and the soul must actively press down into it every thought, every image, every memory, even holy ones, even thoughts of the saints, the Virgin, the humanity of Christ. Everything sealed below so the naked intent can rise toward the cloud above. The verb the author uses for what the soul does at that upper cloud is precise. In Middle English, smite, beat upon the cloud of unknowing with the sharp dart of longing love. Not reason, not meditation, a dart thrown, an act of pure will, stripped of all imagery. And here is what makes this tradition simultaneously radical and orthodox. The author is not saying God is absent. He is saying God is present in a way that exceeds every category by which presence is normally recognized. So that is what the text literally says. Now, what does the tradition do with this? The author of The Cloud is doing serious philosophy. His claim about the intellect's limits maps onto a debate running from Aristotle through Aquinas to Duns Scotus. What is the proper object of the human intellect? Aquinas answered being, esse. The intellect is oriented toward what is. God, for Aquinas, is ipsum esse subsistens, being itself self-subsisting. And yet, even for Aquinas, God's essence exceeds what the finite intellect can grasp in this life. We know that God is. We do not know what God is. He writes, Hoc est ultimum cognitionis humanae de Deo, ut sciatse Deum nescire. The summit of human knowledge of God is to know that we do not know Him. The author of The Cloud takes this further. Not only does the intellect fail to grasp God, the intellect's activity is specifically what blocks the deeper contact. When reason busily forms concepts of God, it substitutes its own product for the reality. The solution is not more refined concepts, but the suspension of concept forming altogether. This produces a specific kind of prayer, not meditation on Scripture, not discursive reasoning about divine attributes, not effective devotion with images and feelings. Instead, wordless, imageless, concept-free love aimed at a darkness experienced as presence. The tradition distinguishes 3 stages of prayer: vocal prayer, meditation or discursive mental prayer, and contemplation. The Cloud addresses only the third, and specifically the highest mode of contemplation, what Dionysius called Theologia Mystica. The author warns explicitly that this book is not for everyone and should not be given to those still in the earlier stages. He is not replacing Lectio Divina. He is describing where it leads. The commentator tradition on The Cloud is remarkably consistent across 7 centuries. Evelyn Underhill, whose 1911 book Mysticism remains the standard introduction to Western mystical theology, placed The Cloud at the summit of English contemplative writing, what she identified as the author's central insight. Contemplation is not an experience you have. It is an act you allow by ceasing to perform the acts that block it. Thomas Merton introduced a widely read 1961 edition. Merton called The Cloud the most important work on contemplative prayer in the English language, a striking claim from a man who had read everything. What struck Merton was the author's insistence that this prayer is not exceptional but normal, not a reward for rare souls, but the natural endpoint of any serious prayer life, available to any earnest Christian who has moved past discursive meditation. William Johnston, the Irish Jesuit who spent decades studying Zen in Japan, wrote the most scholarly modern commentary. Johnston's central observation was that the cloud prayer bears a structural resemblance to Zen shikantaza, just sitting, but with a crucial difference. The cloud's prayer is explicitly relational. The darkness is not emptiness. It is a presence that cannot be conceptualized. The soul is not dissolving into the void. It is standing before a someone whose reality exceeds every image of someone. The orthodox boundary the author draws, and draws carefully, is this: the goal is union with God, not absorption into God. The soul does not cease to be. It becomes most fully itself precisely by surrendering its grasp on every concept and resting in love. How does someone actually pray this way? The author of The Cloud is, unusually for a mystical writer, very concrete about method. Chapter 7 contains the core instruction: choose a single word. The author recommends a word of one syllable: God or love. Not because the word captures God. The entire book has argued that no word can, but because the word functions as a shield. When thoughts crowd in, when images arise, when memories surface and demand attention, you do not engage them. You do not reason against them. You bring them to the word, God, love. The word presses them back into the cloud of forgetting without giving them any foothold. If any thought rise and will press above thee, the author writes, and ask thee, saying, what seekest thou, and what wouldst thou have? Say that it is God that thou wouldst have. Him I covet, him I seek, and naught but him. The monosyllabic word is not a mantra in the Eastern sense. The author calls it a cry, and uses a striking analogy. A man whose house is on fire does not compose sentences to call for help. He shouts one word: fire. The shortness is the urgency. The nakedness is the intent. He also addresses time. He recommends brevity over length. The prayer should happen in what he calls an atom of time, the smallest unit, roughly 45 seconds in 14th century reckoning. Many such atoms in a session, each complete, total, undivided. Not sustained effort, but many brief, full surrenders. 3 practical signs for the author that this prayer is genuine. The soul becomes less preoccupied with others' sins and more aware of its own. The soul becomes genuinely joyful, not performed joyful, and the soul loses interest in elaborate devotional practices, not from laziness, but from simplicity. Everything else has become secondary to the one thing. We began with a familiar problem. The harder you try in prayer, the less you seem to arrive anywhere. The author of The Cloud of Unknowing does not tell you to try harder. He tells you to stop trying in that particular way, to lay down the effort of concept and image, and to substitute something much simpler and much more demanding: a wordless act of love aimed at a cloud, repeated without expectation of result. This is not passive. The word smite, beat upon that cloud, is violent. The dart of longing love is thrown, but the violence is in the act of letting go, not the act of grasping. And the theological stake underneath all of this is the one the tradition has always insisted on. God is not a larger version of the things we know. God is not an object that can be placed before the mind and examined. The cloud is not a problem in the prayer. The cloud is where God is. The question to carry after this video is precise. In your own prayer, what are you actually doing? Are you presenting God with an idea of God, a mental image, a theological proposition, a remembered feeling? If so, the author of The Cloud would say, that is a good beginning, and it is not enough. At some point, the pilgrim must put down the lantern, walk into the dark, and discover that what seemed like absence was not absence at all. It was the cloud. And on the other side of the cloud, though the intellect will never see it, the tradition says there is light.